welcome. How's everybody feeling today? Now, we're at a sports session. How's everyone feeling today? All right. Man, I'm excited to be here. We've been putting a lot of work into this session, so I'm really grateful for everybody's attendance. It's day 3. We're gonna try to bring some energy, keep people up. I fought to make sure I didn't have a post-lunch session, and I got it. So, with that being said, I'm gonna do what everyone does. I'm gonna look down at my clicker and make sure I know how to use it. So, why sports and why now? I got a lot of questions on why we're doing sports here. And let's think about it for a second. At a bare minimum, sports is a great metaphor for all the work that we do. Data, analytics, performance, pushing the limits. So when we think about data and AI for sports, we're talking about trillions of data points. We're talking about a need to analyze player performance at the highest level in the fastest speed. And we also have a new expectation from fans where they want a one-to-one personalized experience where they feel like the sports leagues that they are fans of understand exactly what they're looking for and why. So it's really important to have your data in a great place and thinking about ways that AI can drive that. So that's what we're gonna do today. Now, before we get started, I'm missing a few people. I'm missing some of my teammates from this session. So what I'd like to do now is bring out my team from Southworks, Johnny Halife. From the Pacers Sports and Entertainment Group, Jared Chavez.
Pacers.
We heard Pacers in 4 in the audience.
I heard it.
All right. From Azure Cosmos DB, James Codella. And my name is Andy Beatman, and I'm super pumped to have these guys with me. So, I think it's time that we jump in. I think it's time that we talk about the world of data and AI for sports. Now, here's the interesting thing. We're not new to looking at data in terms of sports. We have a long history here. Now, for me, I think back to the Bill James stat guides, getting really advanced metrics like which baseball player that's left-handed can hit a right-handed pitcher at night on the road, right? It kind of felt silly back then, but it was the beginning of that foundational data. So a lot of really interesting history, and I think it's kind of amazing to think about 2024, 2025, agency, autonomous systems, how does that impact sport? Now, before I talk to my honored guests and we dive deep on Pacers, NFL, we have some really cool case studies that we're proud of in the world of sport. And that includes La Liga, the football league, and they're taking stats to the next level by grounding all of the data, using Azure OpenAI, and delivering to fans and coaches. The BWT, Alpine F1 racing team. I mean, F1 has had just an incredible rise in popularity over the years, and they're focused on pit stop optimization. So you're seeing a lot of like IoT evolve with generative AI and really giving insights to teams at the next level. The NBA is another favorite. I mean, we're honored to have someone from the Pacers organization. The NBA has been a long time adopter of digital modernization and giving fans and coaches just incredible amount of data and stats. And then finally, if any of you tennis fans in the audience, the Billie Jean Cup, I don't want this just to be about traditional sports. They're doing an incredible amount of tennis telemetry, looking at serves live, so coaches and athletes and fans are able to see just incredible insights. Now, I originally, in thinking about this session, we were going to spend a lot more time on the history and the focus of where we're going, but I'm really all about our customers here at Microsoft and really thinking about the ways that they're innovating. So what I'd first like to do is introduce Jared. I'd like Jared to talk a little bit about what the Pacers group is doing for real-time arena AI. So this is all about fan experience in the stadium. So Jared, maybe just a few words from you on what you guys have been up to and the success.
Absolutely. So the pipe dream about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, was how can we better serve those with hearing impairments, non-native speakers, so on. And that's also evolved into translation and how do we get translations and transcriptions, not just in Arena, but also to our apps in real time, and trying to meet the needs of what has traditionally been an underserved area of our fan base. Now, aside from that, I will say the NBA as a whole has done a lot, and there's still a great pipeline coming through. I believe we'll see in Summer League at the Launchpad program, there's a great startup by the name of OneCourt, who's handling with our new Hawkeye systems as well, that is effectively a lap pad that has, to my knowledge, it's a fully universal silicon membrane, and you just put your hands over it. It reads from our Hawkeye systems, and it will play the game out in real time for you. The hope is we can pair that with solutions like this and others to serve not just in the arena, but also at home and other places. This project, it's been so much fun just to see it come to life, and being a part, even a small part of the show, it's as you'll learn a bit later, some standards that need to be met and some things that come up, of course, and a lot of things unfortunate in the moment, but funny afterwards. The hope moving forward is not just to do transcriptions and have things running through, it's also see if we can get real-time audio feedback. For me, growing up a Dodger fan, I wanted to listen to the great Vin Scully when I went to the ball game. And being able to do that with our broadcasters, our radio announcers in the arena, not just in English, but in other languages as well, especially with out in Speedway District, very large Latino fan base that we try to target and serve the best we can. There's also a number of asylum seekers in the northern parts of the state who do come in for games. It'd be wonderful to see if we can start serving them a bit better as well. Hope that was good enough.
No, that was great. And I have to say, like, as someone who's passionate about accessibility, I think it's just amazing to see the AI being used for those that need it the most. So of course we want to drive better stat analysis for coaches and give players better insights into what's happening in the highlight reels. But there's also just some incredible value in how we think about reimagining in-game experience. So for me, going to live sports my whole life, I'm constantly wondering, like, why has not much changed? So I'm really grateful to see how you all are first starting with folks that need it the most. Let's watch a short video. I want to kind of bring this to life for the audience.
Pacers Sports Entertainment is all about creating unforgettable fan experiences. Our job is to put on a good show for everybody every time they come to a game.
We saw there was a significantly underserved segment that came to our events that loved everything about what happened here, but wanted to have the full experience just like everybody else.
There aren't very many arenas that account for the art of hearing. We teamed up with Microsoft to build a real-time speech-to-text solution using Azure AI Speech and Azure AI Foundry. This gave us the tools to quickly build a custom solution. We leveraged pre-built models and trained them on hundreds of hours of Pacers and Fever game calls.
The ability to be able to toggle languages is new. Those types of services we really see being valuable when we host international events.
In a matter of weeks, we boosted accuracy from 91% to nearly 99% and cut response times from seconds to milliseconds.
To be able to put on a show, to put on an experience for fans that's creating memories for them is one of my favorite things to do.
That was awesome. I've watched the video like too many times. I still get goosebumps. I'm really grateful. I'd love a round of applause just for the efforts there. So we've talked a little bit about the experience. We've shown the video. Maybe just for those in the audience that want to see the reference architecture, maybe just a quick walkthrough of what you're doing and how you're leveraging Foundry and other services to make this come to life.
Absolutely. So there's two pieces on here that we don't show, which is automated roster and official coaching updates as well that are fed to our broadcast studio prior to every event. So if we do have a doubleheader with our G League and the Pacers at the same time, all four teams that will be in the arena that day have every person on the court that could be feasibly mentioned thrown into this mix so that we can get their names spelled correctly. We've also done historical dumps, I think back to 62, something around there, of all of our coaches, officials, players, wherever possible for not just the NBA, G League, and WNBA. But that little update every evening, every morning, whenever it goes off, depending on when the game starts, that just tells us, hey, you heard X, it could be spelled 100 different ways, here's the one you're looking for tonight. So we get the most accurate representation. Aside from that, there's also another script that our team developed to deal with figuring out how to cut audio in between games and get a rapid deployment out to the arena. So it used to take us about a week to cut a game, and that was PA announcers getting rid of background noise, indiscernible text, so on and so on. Thankfully, because we've gotten to know our show pretty well, we can automate that, and so a week has become 2 minutes, and we can encode that, unload for transcription and translation same day. Longest part we spend on now is just listening to everything that's been uploaded and actually making sure it's coming through transcriptions properly for training and test. But as for this, the entire thing is basically a giant fire hose that feeds off of the audio feeds coming from our broadcast studio on an on-premise server. That fires up to our model endpoint, and that's pinging off of our translation service, which I believe is running through our C# API. I believe it's Microsoft C# API. And then feeding back to our boards. Translation is also fed to the apps. We don't have that running in Arena. But the nice part right now is because everything is single endpoint, if we needed to roll back a model in real time, we can. We don't have to do anything aside from just change it in Foundry. And on the app side, it's just a web view. So we can deploy it to our websites, our apps in real time. Our developers working with us on the app side, I think, had it up and running in a couple hours. And it was really just plugging it in and making sure everything was syncing for the next app update.
I think 1 week to 2 minutes. I'm trying to do the math in my head on percentage gain on time, but it was really impressive. All right, that's amazing, Jared. So we're gonna we'll talk more about what Jared's team's doing. We'll dive a little deeper shortly. But let's come back over to the NFL Combine. Now, Johnny, we've been seeing you all over the event. You're kind of like the de facto mascot of Build 2025 because we saw Southworks video in the keynote. We saw you guys did a lab yesterday, demo. You've been in a few sessions. So it's been great to have the presence. And I know you're proud of all the work because it's been a long run for you. So let's talk a little bit about this specific project because Southworks is involved in a lot of sports work, but the NFL Combine has been really incredible to see.
Yeah, this has been a fantastic experience. It all started like 3 weeks before the Combine. For those who aren't familiar with the Combine, it's a drill where scouts and coaches look at the 300 elite players to draft them. So they came to us with Microsoft, and we were 3 weeks away from the event, and it's like, we want to bring AI. And we said, like, let's do it. So basically what we did is to create an agent that runs on the Combine app that has been around for like 10 years, that has all the dashboards and everything, where these scouts can go in and ask questions about the drills in natural language. And they can, shape them up as they want it to be. So you can combine, no pun intended, the drill result with the player height or weight or, all those sort of things. And you don't need to wait for analysts or people to build these weird cubes of data so you can make a decision. And the most important thing about it is that's right there on the sideline.
I love it. I mean, I think for coaches and scouts, right, having the data right there, it almost is moot if they can't access it instantly. And by the way, like we're seeing a theme here, right, with Jared and Johnny, real time, low latency, getting clients what they need as fast as they can get it with accuracy. So it's a lot of pressure, as you can imagine, and I'm hearing a lot of complex data points as well. So really cool to see. Now, Johnny, let's also show the video. Now, we showed a version of this in Keynote. Let's run this one as well.
The Combine brings together the top 3% of draft-eligible football players each year. It's an opportunity to get the best 330 athletes in the same place to see which athlete stands out the most.
Just like on the field, every second matters, and having data in real time is huge. It's how much better is player A than player B, how a guy of this size and this talent level has performed. Success comes down to 1 second, one thing that's done better than your opponent. Data is a big part of that.
Teams didn't have a way to filter, search, and compare these stats without digging through multiple reports. AI was a perfect way to get that full prospect view. Azure AI Foundry gave us the tools that we needed to hit the ground running. We started with the Azure OpenAI GPT models that we could use out of the box. We had Azure Cosmos DB to quickly store and retrieve that data, and we have Azure Container Apps to deploy the workload seamlessly. It was like big challenge that we solved in no time.
Microsoft Copilot offers the ability to ask questions about specific players and immediately be able to obtain data that allows comparative analysis from player to player.
Being able to ask that question as I would ask you a question, like give me the fastest 40 times of a defensive lineman. The filtering of data that would have taken hours is done in a matter of seconds.
The ability to collect data in real time and dig deeper into the details while the player's in front of you, it makes you more confident in your decision making.
Now, great video. Let's give a round of applause for Southwest Sports. Now, if anybody was over in the exhibit hall, the hub, you may have seen the NFL Combine station where they had the vertical jump test drill machine. And I'm curious if anybody did it. Can I get a hand raise if you did the vertical jump? Does anybody want to share what they did? I knew it. All right. I think that some of us can push for the offensive lineman vert. I saw a couple 18 and 19s on those O linemen, so I think we can do that. So really cool to see. And if you're going to the celebration tonight, we'll have the 40 and cone drills as well. I'm nervous for all of us. We don't need to tear ACLs. We got to sit on our computers for the next week and get to work. So
You think we should start a bet on that one? See
yeah,
how many happens?
Yeah, how many injuries or who can beat the NFL times? Yeah. Now I want to go a little deeper. So Johnny, I think I'd love for you to talk through the architecture, but I also think it'd be cool if you could show us a demo so
Yeah.
we're seeing what's happening behind the scenes.
Sure.
Yeah, you're good.
Good. So I have here the Combine Copilot app. As you can see, it's running on my browser. It's running on localhost. It's my own version. Since this is a dev conference, I want to show you like a peek under the hood, what's happening. So we'll start with who ran the fastest 40. I'm throwing a question at it, and I'll show you what's going on behind the scenes. So we have our agent, and that agent is picking up a tool that we built that it's like get combined results by Extremum tool that allows us to look for the top X or the bottom X from the stats given a specific drill. I have that, and I get the full response, a JSON, and if I go back, I got my result. This is what the natural language response, but also for sake of this demo, we are also showing what data came back, right? So this is the data. We structure the response. It's interesting because it's not always the same response. I mean, it's always the same data, and it's always accurate, but oftentimes we'll find, I would say, like, by the way, the next two are these two, right? So that's interesting. I can keep going and do like, give me the top 5, and here is when it gets interesting. So what we are doing also is contextualizing the query. So I just wrote, give me the top 5. But what you can see here is that after being contextualized, the actual query became, what are the top 5 fastest 40 dash times in the 2025 NFL Combine from the original query that I gave it. So as you can see, I have here my top 5. I would, draw me a bar chart. What about that? Same thing, we'll try to look for the tools. We will contextualize the query. Again, draw a bar chart from the top fastest 40 dash runners in the 2025 Combine. But I get like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. Let's fix that. So, first thing I want to show is our graphic tool. So this is a tool we are giving the agent. Basically, it takes the player results, figure out the axis, put some colors, scale, and builds a chart. And since we are dealing with text, we are sending back a base64 encoded image that will go back and appear. The only thing that I need to do is to enable this tool. So I will uncomment this thing as part of our tool chain. So as you can see, we have different tools. One being like give me the result for a given player, give me the result, for the top, bottom, like the extreme, give me within a threshold. So I could ask like, who ran the fastest under 5 seconds? And get player data, height, weight, and those sort of things. And now I'm bringing in a new graphic tool. So I can do try again. And here is when, the contextualization of the query becomes really interesting, because it's draw a bar chart of the top 5 40 dash times in the 2025 NFL Combine, and the only thing that I said was try again, right? So it will invoke 2 tools. First, it will go fetch the players, right? Fetch for dash 40, give me the minimum, the year is 2025, and give me the top 5. So it will run the query, and then it will run the charting tool, hopefully at some point. And once, we'll see. Otherwise, I'll try again.
We talked about this. We would prefer a broken demo over a
No,
press play demo.
that's fine. We knew it could happen. It's all live, right? So, I don't know.
Can you debug for us?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Why don't? So, my terminal is dead. That's the problem. So I'll start here, and I will do this. One more. It would start. There you go. And I will turn this into draw me a bar chart of the top 5 40 dash. 40 dash. The query should come through, hopefully. If I'm not breaking anything. I don't know what's going on.
Even the star of build, they're just like us.
Yep,
It's okay.
it should be okay.
Is it running on port 4000 or something?
Yeah. No, but this is the agent. I love the live debugging collaboratively. Nope, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I'll show it later, but something of the demo gods got in the way.
I was praying, for the demo gods, but it's okay. Guys, let's give a round of applause for Johnny, though. All right. Can you switch back? Switch back. All right, now I'm getting really excited because, thank you. I'm getting really excited because what I'd like to do now is I'd like to start the fun. I'd like to start what I'm going to call rapid fire questions. Then we're going to go into a deep dive of technical work. But I think we can have a little bit of fun. We've been getting to know each other over the last, feels like years, but it's been about 3 weeks in the AI world.
Yep.
And while I did have an intention to write every question down on a note card, I'm living in this AI virtual world, so I'm going to go right off the phone. So we're going to get started. And I'm really pumped because we've been talking about doing this for a while now. And I want full honesty and authenticity for my guests. So let's get started. So question 1 for Jared. Captioning in live is really, really challenging. So what's like the fastest latency that you've gotten down to?
I don't think we have a concrete number for latency. We definitely got sub 300 milliseconds at one point, but the more noticeable thing for us is fluidity. So you can kind of see up there, for example, it lags a little bit behind when I'm speaking. We've gotten it now to a point, thanks to a lot of our structured text and a lot of other things, just getting comfortable with the show. As you go up to the line, it's happening in real time. So as I'm finishing each word, they are displaying on the board, and the player names are coming up properly. Not everything, most, I will say, if it's a promotional material that we don't know is coming through, this is about the speed you'll normally see it, maybe a little bit faster. Credit to our network team. But for most things in traditional PA calls, they're happening near instantly.
It's incredible. And Johnny, what about for you? Like, these scouts are probably expecting insights very much live. So what's the fastest insight that you've been able to get to your customer here?
1.2 seconds.
1.2 seconds.
For run the fastest 40 dash.
Yeah, I was gonna say. And I know that you like puns. I think as dads, we share the pun humor. So I think it's pretty incredible that you're beating the fastest 40 times. So, all right. So James, being our leader in data here, I'm really curious. What's like the most bizarre data quality issues that you've seen this year in your work and with your customers?
Yeah, like overall?
Yeah.
Great question. So really for me, what I encounter is when we create demos for sessions like here at Build, we often use generative AI to create like synthetic data, right? So we can show a multitude of different scenarios and how you'd use something like Cosmos DB for generative AI apps. Of course, when you're using large language models to create data, you want to be careful when you're doing this, right? You can create synthetic data, but you want to make sure that you're, adhering to responsible AI processes to make sure that the data that you're creating isn't, potentially harmful or biased or things like this. So usually when I find data quality issues, it's having to do with making sure that we're actually generating data or using data in a responsible way.
I love that. All right, my next question is for Jared. So do you remember the first line of code you wrote, and what was the language?
Lua. What I was doing, who knows? I was definitely trying to mod some game or another. I want to say it was Knights of the Old Republic, which is from like 2002, which is 5 years older than me, or 5 years younger than I am. Not older than me, God.
That'd be an impressive career in a short amount of time. Okay, cool. So same thing for you, Johnny, actually. First line of code you wrote, and what was the language?
I think it was BASIC, and I was trying to build a game launcher.
Amazing. James, I'm going to bring the question down to you as well. I know that you've been building for a long time, so can you think back to the first line of code you wrote?
Yeah, definitely. It was also in BASIC on an original PC using MS-DOS, creating some, simple little text games, trying to have fun as a kid.
It's amazing. All right, I got a question outside of tech. Any hidden talents, Jared? Outside of just putting on some incredible magic in Arena AI?
Lately, not sleeping. That's been with multiple teams going through. That's been a real talent.
Okay.
But now, in general, now being back out west, I'd love to go surfing again. When I was in the Midwest, couldn't do that very much.
Love it, Johnny.
I cook.
You cook.
I cook every Friday at home. We cook challah, which is this braided bread, and we compete from store-bought to legendary. And I'm aiming for legendary.
Aiming for legendary. What do your kids think? What do they say? They're the honest ones, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, hey, this is like too hard.
Too hard.
It's like a rock.
James, I'm going to kick the same question to you. Any hidden talents outside of your day job?
Day job takes a lot of time, but I'm trying to get back into running. It's something that feels good, alleviates stress, preps you for Build.
Well, living in New York, maybe you can do the Fifth Avenue Mile next year.
There we go.
All right, cool. So let's talk about something that is related to what you just said, Jared, because I know for me, I've spent a lot of time at my desk the last few years. So when you're dealing with a hot fix, what's the munchie of choice that you have on your desk?
It's usually let up a prayer and go get ice cream. So by the time I get it, it's either working or it's not my problem anymore.
A prayer and ice cream. Put that on a T-shirt. Johnny, how about you?
I would say cookies. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. That you made?
No.
Okay. James?
Probably way too much coffee.
Too much coffee, yeah. I'm in the same boat. I'm like one of those people when I go into my home office, like a few hours after my day's over, I'm like, why are there 5 cups half full next to it makes me look crazy, but we do a lot for this, for the AI race here. Okay, now, let's go to another question. So, Johnny, I want to ask you this one. What's the weirdest metric that you've learned or have been asked about in the NFL experience? Because I know you're a football guy, so I think that American football maybe was newer to you, right? So
everything was new. I think that one of the things that actually surprised me was how a lot of data comes into play when making these decisions. So it was like, hey, who ran the 40 dash? That's great. But then it's like by players by this height or those sort of things. So I was like, man, that's super complex.
Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. Okay, now I'm curious. I'm going to ask a couple more personal questions before we go into a technical deep dive. So, favorite sports moment of all time? You could have been there. You could have watched it. Just curious. Let's go down the line, Jared. And I'm thinking it's the current. We haven't really acknowledged the fact that the Indiana Pacers are having an amazing playoff run right now. So, Jared's hard at work. So.
Yes, I would say it's probably All-Star Game, Indianapolis. That was, I don't think you get that atmosphere in a larger city, truly. Getting to do, Indy is not the smallest market in the NBA, but I think we're about 26th, 27th. We only have about 500,000 people in the city proper, and then on the wings, I think it goes out to about another 2 million. But the city and us have a really close relationship. It really became a full city festival for an entire week. I know the NBA has different feelings on the snow. I thought it added a certain charm to it, but it was a lot of fun getting to sit courtside for the game itself and get to watch the game come home for, I think, the first time in about 40 years since last time we had hosted.
Amazing. Johnny, I believe that you're a huge Messi Argentina fan. I'm assuming that maybe...
2022?
Yeah, exactly. I actually think I have to say something. I'll admit something. So I generated these images, and I sent them to my teammates here, and I had general positive reaction. I was a little nervous. I only had a few online images to train the data, and Johnny goes, I like mine, but it's missing a trophy. So big shout out to Argentina and for an incredible run. Okay, cool. So what about you, James? What's a sports moment or memory or something that gets you excited?
Yeah, so a memory I get to relive every year is going to the Cornell versus BU hockey game at Madison Square Garden. I'm a Cornell alum, so it's a great tradition to go with my friends.
And I'm a BU alum, so it's nice that we're sitting on opposite ends of the thing. It's actually, we just kind of came to that discovery and working together on the session.
Yeah.
So he was telling me that, and I was like, what do you think of BU? You better be careful. Awesome. All right, those were great. And I'm hopeful that you and the audience as well, you're thinking about where sports has kind of been meaningful and helped drive some memories, whether that's with family. I know growing up, I went to Red Sox games with my dad. Now I'm going with my dad and my son to Mariners games. So definitely a lot of good nostalgia when it comes to thinking about the sports world. All right, cool. Let's keep going though. All right, y'all ready for this one? My next question is, if you could take one Azure product or service on a deserted island for a week, which one would it be and why? Jared?
Good Lord, one of the ones that talks to me, hopefully.
Yep. That's great. So Azure Speech or Azure OpenAI, great. Johnny?
I'll go with the avatar. It's kind of like, get familiar with somebody.
Okay. James?
It's got to be Cosmos DB. Come on. It's self-managed. I don't have to do anything.
Self-managed.
If it's not being used, it scales down. And when I get rescued, it'll scale back up for me.
All right, that's not what you said the other day. You had a different answer, but I'm going to take what you said, and I'm definitely bringing Foro with me on the island, and we're talking, and I'm getting therapy, and it's going to help me get off that island in good spirits. All right, I love that. That's a good one. All right, so last one. So what is one KPI in the work that either shocks you or you look at as a huge indicator of success?
It's not a real KPI. It's the number of meetings, emails, and text messages I get after a player's name is misspelled.
So the question mark email over the misspelled name. I mean, actually, I think we all can relate to getting that email. Maybe that subject line with a question mark, or maybe no subject line at all. So
yeah, hopefully. It's been quiet for a while, but it wasn't at the start of the season.
Well, I think what's going to be interesting now that you're coming up on an overlap, right? Where you've started the overlap with WNBA and NBA.
Let's not jinx it. It's been quiet so far.
Exactly. Johnny, how about you? What's a KPI along the way that's either surprised you or has been something of value to you and the team?
I think I'll call it query entropy. Basically, as we were building, the tools, we would expect a handful of questions and type of questions and type of queries, and then you realize it grows exponentially and how different people think about the exact same decision in multiple ways.
Well, it's thinking about like the art of prompting and how oftentimes it's education to habituate people. Like we can think back to the traditional search days that I'm calling the yellow pages now, where you basically would say, I want a hotel in Seattle, but Google started training you to pick the neighborhood. It would auto-complete. So that granularity drives more value in results. And of course, it's the same thing with prompting and Gen AI. And I'm assuming that you've used what you've seen in the data, like the prompt history, to help sort of recommend what scouts look for.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. So the first one, it's trying to expose, and we did this within the app as suggested questions. What are the type of questions we can address? Like, hey, who is OB4? Or those sort of things. And the other one is to, kind of like learning from the data so we can tune our queries and make sure that they are perfect for what they are looking for.
I love it. All right, now we're gonna move into the next segment, which is more of a technical deep dive. But can I get a round of applause just for my guests? They were candid, they were open. I think when they met me, they were thinking we're gonna just talk about data and AI, and I want to get to know each other as well. So thank you all for that. Now let's jump into what I'm gonna call more of a technical deep dive. And James and I are gonna ask a line of questions to Jared and Johnny that are really developer obsessed and really thinking about how you all are looking at the world. So let's just jump into those questions.
Yeah, sounds good. So Jared, maybe we'll start with you. So can you describe a time when you had maybe like a 10x load, like spike in your data load, and just how you were able to either hot patch that or deal with that in your infrastructure?
Infrastructure at large, negating this project, but our largest volume would be Second Spectrum, which is our optical tracking system. That has to be prepared, and I don't envy Alex, our analytics engineer, who had to deal with this in mid-season. We might get 2 gigs of data, or we might get 4 terabytes in one sitting, and you have to figure out how to scale that up and down, and around the same time it takes for a coach to open it in the morning. So that one's a lot of fun. As for how you scale up and down, we're currently using Azure Databricks. Clusters aside, it's been a lot of how do we keep our storage account from screaming at me the moment we drop 4 terabytes in for one game or one batch, and then do it again the following night when another game happens. That one truly has been getting real comfy with Sweep in our lake, getting real comfy with how Spark and Autoloader function together, and also thankfully, it's not a real-time stream because the data doesn't come in that fast, and it takes a little bit to reconcile. On this project, volume was shaky, especially when we did not have the ability to automatically cut our audio. Training in the beginning of the season, we were working with 2 or 3 games worth of dirty audio. Now we have a clean track, thankfully, that allows us to very quickly cut where people are speaking and hammer that out. But if we're getting blown out or we are winning by 40, you get very different cadences. And so you might only get 5 to 6 minutes when you needed 20, and you might get half an hour when you needed 10. We don't really know at the given time. So trying to figure out what to balance, especially around problematic areas with player names, other phrases and terminology. Promotional material was a big one for us. We know roughly what's going to be said in the arena, but not by who, not when, and not how, which has been the biggest trouble. So our arena, Gainbridge, not the easiest thing for a model to pick up and spell correctly the first time. And so finding Gainbridge advertisements, you might only get 2 or 3 a game. They might be screamed at you through the microphone. Good luck deciphering them half the time. But thankfully at this point, with almost a full season behind us and the Fever now playing, volume hasn't really been a problem for a while.
Yeah, cool. It's really cool. I can use like your data and your metrics to iterate not just on your models and your like accuracy, as we saw in the video, but also just like make your architecture more robust, right? That's cool. Johnny, same question for you. Really crazy variable like workload. How do you cope with that?
I would start with, telemetry, application insight, and those sort of things, just to understand how it would behave. And then instead of fixing, we would rather prepare for it. So I would call it the Holy Trinity. One is Azure OpenAI and its PTUs, so we get a constant, predictable load. The container apps with, some pre-capacity, so we never hit the cold start. That would be weird.
Right.
And then Cosmos DB and its auto-scaling capacity. So that would be what prevent the whole spike thing.
Yeah, nice. Just like when I'm on my desert island, right?
Exactly. That's great. Jared, I'm curious, like, what kind of gave you guys the signal that cloud was good enough and you didn't need everything on-prem and you could deliver at the speed that you've been talking about? I'm assuming not everything is in cloud, but what kind of gave you guys that signal?
So it depends on the product. We do have to, pretty much everything that runs the in-game show is on-prem, but we have begun to experiment not only with this, but we have a live Second Spectrum, which is our optical tracking, also has a video feed with overlays that we can put on. If you've watched the NBA Finals, it's a very similar looking system. That was entirely hosted through Azure for us. I think it had about a 2 to 4 second latency depending on the game. For us, it depends on the application. For this, it's fast enough. Again, credit to our network team. I'm not taking any of that. We accidentally hosted, I think they were 4 to 8K cameras during the All-Star game over Wi-Fi by accident, and they did it just fine, and we didn't realize they weren't plugged in for a while. So our on-prem is truly world-class. I don't have enough good things to say about them, but as far as when we plug into cloud and when we've decided to make that, I think our number of actual physical servers on-prem now is single digits, and our virtual servers are in the dozens. We've just gotten to a point where it is fast enough, and we, especially from a maintenance perspective, don't have to go crawling through, or God forbid, having to go up on that catwalk to go find whatever we're looking for. But I'd say we're years down the line from that decision. We've been cloud first for most of the last 8 years now.
Got it. Thanks for that. Cool. Johnny, question for you. You brought up PTUs. Talk a little bit about that deployment strategy, because obviously PTUs is kind of new. You have the 1 month and 1 year reserve instances. Maybe talk a little bit about to the audience about how PTU comes into the strategy in terms of scale and predictability.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the type of problem, the Combine, it's an event, it's a period of time, and we need it to be kind of burstable, right? We learned that from the compute. We might have cold start and drills are happening and stuff like that. Then the other variable is like, when you look at OpenAI, one of the things that we wanted is to get the answers even in between reps. So the only way that you can get that predictable, throughput of tokens as you were asking questions is by locking in some PTUs.
I love that. Really cool. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about data quality and safety. I think that's a really important. James, I think you have a really good question for Johnny.
Yeah, so Johnny, I'm curious, so from both a prompt engineering, like a LLM perspective, and also from a data perspective, you guys probably have a bunch of like PII or multi-tenancy. How do you make sure that the results coming out of your large language model are actually like isolated and kept secure?
Yeah, we implemented or integrated the AI red teaming agent from Azure Foundry that allows us to stress test our prompts, figure out, from anything that we won't want to leak, to PII, to toxicity, and those sort of things. So it gives us, the confidence to move forward before these things hit into production that we stressed a lot.
I love that. Jared, I have a question for you because, working in the Azure OpenAI space, the pace of innovation on models can be really difficult to keep up with. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like every week we're launching a new model that's more powerful and can sort of deliver even greater at some of those capabilities. So how is your team thinking about like model lifecycle and testing new models and blocking those models when they're not performing to the benchmarks that you would expect that you've gotten from previous models?
Sure. So as far as how models are chosen, we narrow it down very quickly. I need both real-time and batch abilities for transcription and translation. I'm hoping the next iteration we can bake that all into just one model rather than having to rely on a few different services to accomplish everything. So that already narrows it down to we're talking 5 or 6, realistically. Our current model that's in production, I think, is over a year old, which is an eternity ago. And its baseline on our current test set, I think, has about a 13% error rate. Our production model that's fully trained on iteration 3 or 4, somewhere around there, is now sitting at 1.14%. The baseline, the new iteration of the baseline model we use dropped itself from 13 to 5. So we're going to be upgrading to that pretty soon. But as far as how quality checks are handled and what we're dealing with on a daily basis, it's really been a game of survival. As audio comes in, we only play so many games, and so we can only fix so many problems at a time, trying to target problematic areas like player names especially, sponsor names especially, but also making sure we're not accidentally interpreting something into profanity has been fun. That has happened a few times. Thankfully not on the boards, to my knowledge, but it does happen certainly in testing. From our perspective moving forward, it's how do I get time to production down to same day, if we can. If I needed to retrain a model, let's say it takes 3 or 4 hours, that needs to happen by 9, 10 in the morning. I need to deploy that by 6 o'clock at night. And again, because everything's running through our endpoint, broadcast doesn't need to update. It just needs to stay pointed at the newly updated endpoint and move forward. But in the event we have something catastrophic happen, and for some reason Model 5 is not performing better than Model 4, even though in testing it says it does, we'll just roll back to Model 4 and nothing changes in production. Thankfully, it's that easy for us. Moving forward with a lot of the translation, especially audio playback that we're beginning to explore of not just getting transcriptions in the app, can we get our announcers speaking not just English through the apps and potentially also, if media deals permit, onto our broadcast streams, can we also get Quinn Buckner speaking in Spanish and other languages? I haven't talked to him about that yet. We'll find out what he thinks. But we'll see how that transpires around July when the WNBA All-Star Game is over with. We need to host that first and not rock the boat too much before national television puts that board in front of however many millions of people. But that's roughly the process currently.
See, now I'm excited because that All-Star Game, there's the game within a game for us now that we know you. And we're going to all be watching the game and looking at the Jumbotron.
Yep. Please do play the game of texting me 500 times the moment something goes wrong.
No. We know what KPI matters to you, and that's the low number of emails. So hopefully not. I think that's really, really fascinating. So thanks for that. And honestly, I think we launched Model Router this week as well, which it can help enable what you're talking about, where you have maybe a few models that you want to deploy, and it'll help sort of make the choice on which one to deploy as well. Okay, amazing. Let's keep going down our question list. So. And we have a few more, and then we're going to go into our next segment. So I want to talk a little bit about, actually, I think, James, I think you should ask this one, actually. About? What's your 1-minute rollback drill if deploy misbehaves?
Yeah.
You're kind of touching on this a little bit, but how are you thinking about contingency plans?
Yeah, in this case, since we are using container apps, every single deployment is tagged, and if something spikes up or we have an issue, we just roll back to the good known version.
Got it. Similar for you? How do you think about it?
Again, for us, because of the way everything's built out and deployed, we keep all of our older models in production available to us. So in the event we needed to change, it's also for us starting to look into not just basketball, but shows, concerts, events. We do 300 plus of them a year. We're about to have 2 venues at the end of the year, 3, 4, potentially 5 in the next handful, several years, depending on what's going through. Maintaining those will be a separate challenge, but hopefully the models themselves will remain the same. And again, whichever team, whatever events moving through, our broadcast team will have the luxury of pick your endpoint for whatever you're working on tonight. And if we need to roll to an older model or newer model, you can. And we're removing the development team from that equation. I want that in the showrunner's hands rather than mine. They know what's going on better than I do, and it's their show, not mine.
I love that. And by the way, like when we think about AI and data and just the way that it's sort of impacting personas in different roles, I love that you're saying, no, let's keep the expert managing the entire situation. I love that. Great, this is awesome. So I want to just ask, we have 2 more questions. And I think these are important because, I said at the beginning that while sports is the metaphor here, I want there to be some practical takeaways. So I want to start with Jared. If you were to think about running this like pipeline in an OR, like in an emergency room scenario, frontline workers needing to be able to sort of have access to real-time speech, how would you think about deploying this?
It wouldn't be much different, though much higher stakes than basketball, I will admit. As far as how it works, it's effectively the same. Ours is a fire hose for audio. It receives and outputs to whatever you want. The web view especially that we've put together with Southworks over here has allowed us to embed it into whatever you wanted. So if you wanted just to have a blank web page with nothing but that running, you absolutely could. And I think for us, we've got 12 languages. We have upwards of 97 we can support. We're not doing that, but we'll do the dozen or so we feel comfortable with right now. As for where I think that might become more helpful is what we're looking at this later this year post WNBA All-Star, which is real-time audio translation and real-time audio playback. While captions are helpful, looking up and down and having to figure out and read what's going on, especially, I guess in that case, an emergency situation. I don't want to read, I want someone to tell me what's happening rather than that. So I'd be focused more on an actual audio feed rather than captions.
Well, I love that, and you brought up before this ambition where you could take your broadcaster's voice and synthesize it in any language, which is our personal voice product, and it's absolutely one of the best use cases I can think of, because there's a lot that can go wrong with Neuro Voices, and we're really focused on working with companies that have really tight use cases. That's why it's a limited access product. So this idea of course, getting consent from the announcer, it actually creates a new business model for voice talent and personalities. And I'll just give an example outside of sport where you have like companies like McDonald's that are effectively generating all of their audio ads to put on things like Spotify that are usually personalized and custom by just deploying someone they've already recorded with a script. And now that voice talent, rather than being paid for going in the studio, they're being paid every time their voice is used. So almost like a royalty. So it's an interesting way where voice talent can actually, their voice can go on and live forever, and there's still ways that they can make money. Now, it may not work for your actual broadcaster here, but it's a really unique use case. I think last question, James, for Johnny.
Excuse me. Yeah, so Johnny, if you had to think through what is an ideal data set for maybe an e-retail Copilot, right? How would you think about generalizing your infrastructure and what you build to other domains like retail?
Yeah, I would bring the SKU catalog and probably some behavior transaction anonymized, and I would try to make sense out of it, build the right tool so it becomes useful for somebody on the floor, saying like, hey, what goes with this shirt? Or what's moving slow so we can put it up front. So those sort of, it's the same thing. You have a population of products, you have how they behave, that would be the anonymized transaction data, and we'll try to drive those questions to just be friendly and helpful for those using it.
Yeah, it's a really cool perspective of taking your inventory and descriptive data and your transactional data and use for your AI apps.
Yeah.
And I also love the point about empowering associates. If you're in store, you could actually think about being a business owner even as an associate, because you know what products are moving slow, and you might actually update end caps or how you merchandise in the front of the window to drive those product sales. So that was really cool. Okay, now we only have a little bit of time left, and I want to move to our final two pieces of programming. The first is going to be a quick demo. James is going to show a new integration with Foundry and Cosmos DB that I think is really exciting. So James and I will come up. We'll show a few of our more recent announcements, and then we're going to finish with our sports ticket giveaway. So if you're around on Friday, we're going to be giving out front row tickets to 2 Seattle sports. So this being said, let's log in. Actually, let's go to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So you may have seen already that Azure AI Foundry Agent Service announced a whole bunch of new integrations and connections. And so we're really excited to have bring your own agent thread storage with Cosmos DB. It's really easy to set up and deploy, so I'm going to show you an example here. So if you go to the samples library, you can actually see that there's a Bicep template that you can use to easily deploy your resources. So if I click this here, it brings me to the Azure portal, and I can easily set up my containers and my Azure Cosmos DB resource and connect my agent environment in AI Foundry with Cosmos DB to store those chat histories, those session information with my agents. So I can see an example here, right? I have my agents playground. I'm already actually all connected to my Azure Cosmos DB resource by deploying that Bicep template. So I can see that here. And I can ask it some questions like, tell me about the Indiana Pacers, right? I'm using a GPT-4o mini model because I want it to be a little bit faster and a little bit more responsive. So I'll let this run. Now I can see the result comes back from the large language model. Now for this thread, for this session, I have a thread ID here, and that thread ID has all the associated metadata of our conversation. If the agent's called any tools, that gets recorded. Inputs and outputs from the agent, including inputs and outputs from me, the human, also get recorded here. And what I can do is I can actually go to my Cosmos DB resource, and I can see that a few of the containers have actually already been provisioned here for me to capture this thread data. So I have one for agent entities, system threads, and then thread message store here. So I'll go ahead and rerun this query here. So I'm basically just selecting all of the data items, all the JSON documents that describe the contents of those threads, right? And I can see that there's a bunch of results that return down below. You can see I have 6 results, right? So here's my original thing that I had up on the screen, my hello there text. But as I scroll down, I can see other metadata and information, like responses from my large language model that's encoded here as well, right? So this is really powerful. I'm able to collect chat history and session information from my agentic applications, store it in Cosmos DB so I can bring it back to my agents for contextual relevancy, but also do downstream analysis, right? Maybe I want to see where are my agents performing well, where do they need some help, where do I need to do some retraining, right? So really a great end-to-end experience. It makes it super easy and cost-effective to store those thread agentic session data in Cosmos.
That was amazing. Thanks, James, for showing that demo. Really appreciate it. Now, we have 5 minutes. So I told you all to stick around. And because of it, I want to do this ticket giveaway. So I'm going to do 2 questions, all right? The first question, the winner is going to get tickets to the Seattle Reign on Friday. And the second question is going to be for Seattle Storm, front row on Friday as well. So apologies if you're not in Seattle. Next year, stick around an extra day, all right? We'll do the same thing next year. So I want to just quickly show. Two. I want to show, by the way, it's not the answer. It's literally not the answer. So I want to show, all right, I got guesses. This is funny. All right, cool. So guess the number of spoken words during the Indiana Pacers' last NBA playoff broadcast, so end-to-end broadcast. This is kind of like how many Skittles are in a jar. Man, devs, you love these questions, right? So I want you to think about this. Number of words said in the broadcast. It's open. I want to see people's data coming in. I will go back to the QR code so you can get in, all right? We got front row tickets to the Reign. Women's Football Club. All right. Listen, don't laugh when I say football. I have Johnny here, so I have to make sure that I enunciate football and football differently. I've been practicing this a lot more than I want to admit. I'm seeing a lot of guesses. This is nice. Look at the date. Somebody put a trillion? Who put a trillion? What espresso, what kind of coffee? A trillion. All right, I love it. I'm seeing a lot of amazing guesses, all right? I'm gonna get 15 seconds before I close this one. And when I announce the answer, I need honors system, the winner, come find me after, and I'm gonna transfer you the tickets digitally, so you'll have them before you go, all right? I got the tickets. All right, we're seeing a lot of guesses. Now, I wanna break this down a little bit, all right? So we're talking about the 48-minute game. We're talking about pre-show, halftime, and post-game. So we're talking about 150 minutes of broadcast. Is that about right, Jared?
Around there.
Okay, cool. So the answer is 24,000 words in a broadcast. I want to understand the methodology and the reasoning behind the trillion. So let's talk about that as well. I think that's very interesting. So 24,000. Who was closest to 24,000? Anybody get it on the nose? 23? Yeah. So who's the winner? Who did 23,587? Wait. We don't got bashful folks here, do we? Who did 23? Who did 23,587? All right.
Is it Jared?
Then we're gonna go to number 2 then. I see. I should have just taken a picture and asked ChatGPT what was the second. I could have used the OCR. 25. Who got 25? All right, congratulations. You're not going to be here Friday. All right, we're going to third place then, baby. All right. I'm seeing, I need some help from the audience. 31. Who got 31? I'm going to the game, by the way, if no one's taking these tickets. No one got 31. Question 1. Oh, you answered right, but for question 2? I'm going to go down to 4th then. And in fact, I need some self-selection here. Come on now, who's close? 35. Who got 35? I don't believe that no one, unless my teammates, which I think is the case, unless my teammates are the ones guessing right. I'm really trying to give these away. Like, can we support women's soccer here, please? You know what? You're the winner. You are the winner. Come talk to me after, all right? Now, we're going to go second question. Everybody scanned in? I want to know how fast a scout can get an analysis of a player's full filming instantly. So how fast can you get game footage analyzed? All right? Let me open it up. So how long does it take NFL scouts using AI to analyze a player's entire game film for the combine? Man, where's my trillion person at? What are you going to put for this? 12, 245 seconds.
So technically all the crowd noise.
Yep. So the unit of measure for the first question was literal words the broadcaster says. Second question is
some time.
Is the literal, like, you have the footage, you run it through the tool that Southworks has, how fast do you get the analysis?
Yeah, some time unit.
All right, I'm gonna close this down in 2 seconds, all right? I'm gonna literally hit stop, get it in. All right, so the answer is, and I see that someone got it, the answer is 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes to analyze the film. I see you in the back, congratulations. Now, all I'll ask if you're still sitting here is, because we are at an actual sports session. So, and I didn't double check my slide. Come on, spell check. How did we do in the combine? So I'm curious, how did we do here? So scan the QR code. We'd love some feedback. We'd love to keep bringing these types of sessions to Ignite and build in the future. So from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the team, thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.